Solange Moujin joins me on the set to see what the papers have been saying today. Hi, Solange.
Hi, Jeannie.
You're going to start here in France, where there's been a lot of pushback against a proposed global security law from the French government.
Yeah, and in a wordplay on this so-called global security law, L'Humanité says that it's Macronism that is now globally insecure. The left-leaning paper says that the movement against the law and against police violence is exactly what the government wanted to avoid. L'Humanité cheers the pushback of anywhere between 1 and 500,000 protesters that came out on Saturday. In France, often the numbers are a bit vague about exactly how many protesters there were. Anyway, L'Humanité says that it is time for France, the land of liberty, to stop being turned into what they call an authoritarian absurdistan. Now, Libération, another left-leaning paper, says that Macron is starting to feel the squeeze, that his government prefers to let the country, quote-unquote, rot, rather than remove Article 24 or the ban on filming police officers without blurring their faces. Like Libération, the right-leaning paper Le Figaro says that Macron is currently trapped. It writes that the Élysée still hopes to save Article 24 despite the indignation caused on the left and actually infighting as well within Macron's own party. Now, for L'Opinion, Macron is trying to find a way out or a place to land in this storm, in this crisis, but without having to back down on what has become a symbolic fight. And for L'Opinion's cartoonist, infighting is making matters all the worse.
So the video of this black Frenchman, Michel Zecler, a music producer, being beaten up by police officers created outrage across France. 4 officers are now under formal investigation. For the French press, is this just a case of a few bad cops?
Well, for many, the Zecler video is sort of a larger symbolic problem. And to prove it, the investigative site Mediapart has published another video of another incident where undercover cops stop a car without announcing that they're police officers. The driver actually thinks that he's being robbed. He and his friends are being robbed, so he backs up. At which point, the police officer shoots the car twice, and the police officer claimed self-defense. Now, this proves to be false, as the car didn't charge the officers. But as Mediapart explains, the incident is full of shifty testimonials, a complete lack of following protocol, not to mention violence all on the part of the police, all of which was discovered, and only discovered, you could say, because of surveillance videos.
All right, let's go now to India, Solange, where tens of thousands of farmers have been gathering for weeks now. They're protesting the government's agriculture reforms.
Yeah, and as the Hindu tells us, the movement is growing, with farmers descending on Delhi and coming into from its outskirts to protest Narendra Modi's new reforms of farming laws. Now, these market deregulations would allow farmers to sell their harvest to any business rather than going through the government avenues. And this idea is not going down well. The Hindu tells us in its editorial that the farmers are right to be wary of one day potentially, quote, being helpless in the face of exploitative market forces, end quote, even if the reforms could create more competitivity, more efficiency and competitive end of a single monopoly. Now, the paper says that Modi needs to provide a guarantee and meet in the middle between the interests of consumers and producers, an equilibrium or a compromise that the BJP has not been capable so far of, according to the print. The site says that Modi's party could have avoided all of these problems had they had a greater understanding of Punjab, where most of the farmers are from, as well as a little bit of humility.
Solange, you've got a story for us now from Switzerland, where a referendum on corporate responsibility for abusive business practices failed to pass yesterday, but the ideas behind it are still making a lot of waves.
Yeah, the issue is far from over. That's how Le Temps describes the referendum that would have basically made multinational corporations responsible for human rights and environmental abuses that happen worldwide because of them. Now, why isn't it over? Well, the referendum did actually win the popular vote. It didn't get the double majority of cantons or states that it needed, and that's why it failed. So the paper argues that the will of the people needs to be taken into account, needs to be taken seriously, namely in the form of a weaker counter-proposal that will be triggered. Now, for Herman, the illustrator of the Tribune de Genève, this bypassing of the will of the voters is the inspiration of his cartoon today. And in it, you have 2 mine directors up on top saying that the Swiss don't get to decide things in African mines or in Switzerland either.
All right, Solange, just to wrap up now, you've got an article about what's been dubbed the Sistine Chapel of the Ancients.
Indeed. Now, why ancients? Well, because it dates back to 12,500 years ago. Now, what am I talking about exactly? I'm talking about tens of thousands of Ice Age paintings that have been found on a cliff face in a remote forest of the Amazon. Now, they stretch over 8 miles in Colombia and were discovered last year and are actually being unveiled in a documentary that will be aired in December. Now, this still unnamed site has so many drawings, many of them of extinct animals, actually, that the British Colombian team that discovered it said that it is going to take years to document all of them, and not to mention uncover what they say about the first peoples to live in the Amazon.
Interesting stuff. Thanks for that, Solange Mougin, with that look at the papers today. It's